Hi folks, you're with Tastus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the ongoing trial of Kyle Rittenhouse in Wisconsin, Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the events surrounding that and the possible directions things may take from here, and also the peripheral actors that have behind the scenes, behind the curtain, have influenced events for the state in their effort to frame up Mr. Rittenhouse for something that he didn't do. So I guess the trial's pretty much gone as many expected, given what we've seen of the video evidence. It appeared to me, at least, quite a clear case of self-defense, and I assumed that, part assumed that if the prosecution was bringing the case to trial, that they must have some other evidence that they were ready to show that would cast a different light on it, because as far as I could tell, it was as bad a clearer-cut situation of self-defense you could ever get. And so those cases shouldn't go to court, or ideally don't go to court. So the fact it did, I thought, well, maybe they've got something and they're just sitting on it, which would be against the rules of evidence, because you have to disclose your evidence to the defence or to the other side, so that everyone's got a chance to examine the evidence and consider its merits before the hearing in front of the judge actually begins. And I'll come back to that in a minute, that very key point, because there's a habit with the globalist inspired legal system now, which again, can't be bothered with due legal process, the rules of evidence, the rule of law. That's just bullshit that gets in the way of the globalist project. As far as they're concerned, there's now quite a pattern, and whether you look at the Duke University fake rape case or a number of other cases, there's now a pattern where the state, because they're so intent on getting a prosecution, particularly if it's a straight white guy, they're so intent on getting a prosecution, they withhold key evidence. They either know that the evidence is there and they don't get it because it won't help their case or will be injurious to their case, or they have it and they sit on it. Either way, that's an absolute travesty and should be punished I believe, should be punished by the judge with contempt of court and disbarment for any prosecutor or district attorney that engages in that behaviour. Now, we've got a situation, as I understand it, with the Rittenhouse case or trial, where Gage Grosskreutz had a mobile phone. He'd taken photographs and a video, and there'd be messages going back and forth, and that the information on the phone was not going to be helpful to the prosecution's case. So there was political interference to stop the police. And this, again, is a pattern that you see time and time again now, and it's just not fucking good enough, where the police were leaned on politically to ignore certain evidence or not collect it, or if they had collected it, not to put it forward and to sit on it, so that it, because it wouldn't be helpful to the state in getting a prosecution. Now, that's not how the law works, by the way, just in case these useless fucking district attorneys, in the unlikely event they're listening to my video, that's not how it works. The way it works is that all the evidence is, but the available evidence is produced, both parties have it, and then you go through the facts. And if the facts are that Mr. Rittenhouse acted in self-defense, those are the facts. Those are the facts, and he walks free out of that fucking court. If, on the other hand, there's other evidence that would suggest a different outcome, then that evidence can be put forward and examined and tested in an independent, impartial court of law. Now, that hasn't happened here, in my view. That hasn't happened here. Evidence was sat on. There was political chicanery in the background, district attorney being leaned on, police officers being leaned on, and that's simply not acceptable, nor should anyone accept that in a court of law. And that needs to be dealt with. And I think those people, in my view, should be prosecuted, and they should be chased after. There should now be a special commission to go and find out what political influence, whether it be intimidation or anything else, was used to try and influence and prejudice a case in a court of law, and that needs to be gone after. The second thing is the next thing is that the media, before there was a jury, before there was a verdict, and before the evidence had even been heard, the mainstream media, certainly the pieces that I saw on cable television and newspapers and elsewhere, were defaming Mr. Rittenhouse in a most horrible way, with extreme prejudice, and I'm hoping, sincerely hoping, that when the case is done, that Mr. Rittenhouse's lawyers go after these people and these people in the media, and they are made to pay, and pay handsomely, for their defaming Mr. Rittenhouse before there was even a judgment, before the evidence was even out and available to review. They were doing that. So that's an example of extreme prejudice. Globalist inspired, of course. He's a straight white male. He was trying to stop the riots or the effects of the riots. Stop a gasoline station from being burned down and so on. So as far as I'm concerned, if that's what Mr. Rittenhouse or anyone else doing that, then that's a public service. The people trying to burn the buildings down with the rioters, and yet they're the ones that the media is defending. I mean, talk about an upside down world. But I hope Mr. Rittenhouse's lawyers go after those people and make them pay handsomely for their unwarranted and extremely prejudicial defaming of Mr. Rittenhouse all across the national media. Now, there's a couple of other things I'd like to touch on here that I have trouble understanding. Those rioters there, they just seem to be a little bit, they weren't just rando rioters. They were better organised than that. There was some sort of a central control there. Now, if we look at certainly the people that I've been aware of, I don't think anybody has been convicted or charged or arrested or anything. I think, as I understand it, Mr. Rittenhouse was the only person that was ever arrested in that entire riot. Buildings were burnt down, property was destroyed. There were arsonists that were running crazy all over the place, and there was no one else arrested. I mean, that's the insanity of the world we're living in. The only honest person in the place was the one that was arrested, and I think that's probably the shape of the globalist world to come. But why would these people want to? If you look at Gage Grosskreutz, when he was being cross-examined in the witness box, and it was online. You can view it. It's in the public domain. Whether he some people think he's an unsavory character or not, it really doesn't matter. Why would a young man like that? I mean, he doesn't appear to be handicapped in any way. Why would a young man like that want to do those things? You have to be filled with a lot of anger and hatred to want to do that. As in riot or try and burn down a gasoline station, or burn anything down for that matter. Why, they're there, and if you look at the sort of the intensity of the anger of Mr. Rosenbaum, he was almost in a catatonic state. Seemed, as far as I can tell, he seemed with anger and bitterness and filled with resentment and resentments of years. Why are these people like that? What makes them that angry and that keen and eager to do damage of property belonging to, they don't even know who it belongs to, just rando damage? What inspires them to want to do that? Now, no one seems to be asking those sort of questions. If anything, the globalists and the Democrat Party, they want this because it creates division and instability and so on, and that's what they want. So, Mr. Rittenhouse is the criminal because he's stopping the globalist project. He's stopping them from or played a role in stopping them from doing this and from creating this social division of fomenting this destruction. Mr. Rittenhouse was an obstacle to that, and that's why they have to get him. Now, coming back to the case where I think the judge and the whole prosecution, they're already under pressure, and I think they'll come under a lot of pressure to try and get him for something. They rave on about this crossing state lines or he's a minor, had a gun or so. But I think they'll try and get him for something, spitting on the sidewalk, anything, just so they can record an offence. So the mainstream media go, and convicted criminal, and they'll run with that narrative. I mean, you can almost see it. So that they need to get him for something. I think if he's completely acquitted, which is, I would think, that the likely outcome at the moment, that's my view at least, then I wouldn't be surprised if Merrick Garland, given he's probably the most activist Attorney General ever in the history of the United States, I think they'll be cooking up something to try and chase after Rittenhouse with there. So I hope the GoFundMe folks are going to be hard at it. I hope it doesn't. By the way, I very much hope it doesn't. I think he's suffered enough, but because all he did was defend himself, for goodness sakes. I wouldn't be surprised if they've got a bunch of goons waiting for him as soon as he walks outside the courtroom door, but following the acquittal. But I hope that he does get acquitted, obviously. But I hope those goons aren't there. But after seeing Attorney General Garland's performance thus far, I wouldn't put anything past him in terms of his support of the globalist project and his maniacal desire to crush straight white males, and again any opposition to the globalist project. So that's something that's yet to be determined. So watch closely for that. But if the judge is to be commended, given that he's held firm, I've got no doubt he's under pressure. Similarly with the jurists, saying as far as I'm aware, there are people out there right now who are saying that they know who the jurists are, they know their names, know where they live, and they better deliver the right sort of verdict or else. Now, I don't see the feds or the police going after those people. I mean, can you just try just come to understand this? There are people out there inside who are openly stating, and they're doing videos and posting online, that they either have or will or are going to engage in jury intimidation in the Rittenhouse trial, jury intimidation to get the verdict they want. Now, if there's ever a case for law enforcement to act decisively, then that would be it. Arrest those people. But instead, someone misuses a pronoun somewhere on a transgender bathroom advocate or something like that. They're the ones who are being arrested, not these people that are threatening to intimidate or have intimidated a jury. The other thing, in the George Floyd case, when a federal politician went out just near where the courtroom was, effectively, in paraphrasing here, but saying if we don't get the verdict we want, there's going to be some god awful riots, and the jury better deliver. Now, why that congresswoman wasn't arrested for that? I mean, the Fed should have gone after them straight away, and they should have been. No, you're not sitting in the lawmaking legislative body of the federal government anymore. Not if you're going to do stuff like that. The reason we have independent courts of law and the reason we have juries is so we get a verdict that is untainted by harassment and pressure and political inducements or indeed threats of violence. And that's how it must be. And if we want sort of an absolute schmozzle of a legal system where no one has confidence in it, and it's simply a device used by the globalist state to beat the crap out of anyone they don't like, then that's where we're heading. And every politician should be standing up to stop that. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.